And he said, Shon, how are you going to help yourself or help us and you're not helping yourself? That's when I had to start looking at myself. And I had to start doing the work, because I can't help these men who come into my office if I can't help myself, I can't help them. And that was the beginning of building bridges. Because I didn't want to build a bridge. I wanted to waddle in my pain. I wanted to waddle in my hurt. Listen, my thought was he didn't deserve, they don't deserve another chance. But the crazy thing about it is, have I not gone to the work in the prison, I wouldn't discover who I was. Because I didn't know that I was dealing with so much trauma myself. See, when my father told me that I was too small, and my father didn't support me, and my father didn't validate me, and he didn't speak into the man who I thought I should become, I was walking around with that trauma. And it was a prisoner who's still incarcerated, who was doing life. And he looked at me and said, man, how are you going to help me? And you haven't even helped yourself. And so that was the day I had to start looking at me, because when we look at this mirror right here, see, on the outside, when we see these men coming to our agencies, when we're working with people, we see this big burly man, but on the inside, sometimes that's not what's really going on. And he said, Shon, how are you going to help yourself or help us and you're not helping yourself? And then that's when I had to start looking at myself. And I had to start doing the work, because I can't help these men who come into my office if I can't help myself, I can't help them. And one of the hardest things that I had to do, people, I had to forgive the man who murdered my brother. And I'm not going to say that this was about 10 years ago. No, this was 2 years ago. Out here doing this amazing work, working with fathers, I didn't want to forgive him. I didn't want to build the bridge. Because in my eyes, he didn't deserve to have a bridge to be built. He ought to suffer. And when I looked at this image, it made me think that, Shon, you're still living in your own trauma. We're talking about building bridges and harmonizing efforts. The people that we serve, in your eyes, they may not deserve to have a bridge to be built. They may not, and a lot of times, the reason why we say that is because we're dealing with our own trauma or our own experience. See, my 13-year-old, well, she's 16, but 15 now. No, 16, right? 16. My wife gave me the head nod in the back. She gave me the head nod in the back. 16. So last year, here, when I was writing the book, Broken Boys Become Broken Men, I'm like, man, I'm done. I'm so excited. But then I get a phone call from the school, and the school said, this is what they said, Liz. They said, your daughter is suspended. What you mean she's suspended? Not my Shelby. Like, Shelby doesn't like to fight. Shelby doesn't like to argue. She doesn't. And so the lady said, watch this. She said she's suspended for an almost fight. Yeah, see, like, what? An almost fight. Like, no, not my baby. And she said, well, let me go look at the videotape. They looked at the videotape, they came back, they said, yup, she was there. No, she didn't fight, but see, my baby used her resources. So what she did, she went to go get some friends. She went to get her friends. And because she was part of that, she got suspended. And see, that night when we was driving home from her soccer practice, I said, baby, how do you feel? And she started crying. And I'm like, yo, I'm about to call these parents. We need to have a conversation. you hurt my baby. Like, you hurt my baby. And she looked at me, she said, Dad, I'm not crying because of them. And I'm like, yo, why are you crying? She said, I'm crying because of you. What you mean you crying because of me? She says, Dad, you the one who told me to go in and stand up for myself and say something. I didn't want to handle it that way. You made me do that. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that's what I was doing. And on my way home, I realized when I was 13 years old, see that little boy? I was 13 years old. This boy wanted to fight me. His name was TT. Wanted to fight me. And I didn't want to fight him. And my girl cousin came to my rescue. And she stepped in. And I didn't have to have this fight. And it was over. But it really wasn't over. Because everybody remembered that Shon didn't fight. And his girl cousin came to his rescue. At 13 years old. So at 47 years old, that 13-year-old boy was still on the inside, giving his 15-year-old daughter at the time advice on how to handle her situation. It wasn't the father, it was that little boy that was on the inside giving her advice, telling her how to navigate this circumstance and situation. Because I didn't do the internal work, that my trauma as a little boy was being placed on my daughter. I wanted her to avenge what this little boy was still suffering with. So I had to have a conversation with him, and I said, Shon, I forgive you. The little boy in me had to tell the grown man, I forgive you. And I had to tell the little boy on the inside, it's okay to be afraid. It was okay at that moment to be afraid. It was okay to not want to fight.